One stamp set, two stunning cards, and endless possibilities. Well, when I first received this arabesque medallion set by Altnew, I had no idea what I was going to create with it. But once I started, I couldn't stop. I have lost count of how many cards I have made using this particular set. Now, today I'm sharing two completely different card designs using the same large stamped image. We have some die cutting, embossing, along with ideas to help you get more out of the supplies. Hi, I'm Revati and welcome to my crafty space. Let's jump right in. The star of today's project is this beautiful arabesque medallion bundle by Altenew. Now, this I think was part of the May release. This bundle includes a large, beautifully detailed medallion stamp, along with coordinating layering stencils and a matching die, making it incredibly easy to create intricate designs with very little effort. What I love the most about this set is how versatile it is. You can use the entire medallion as a bold focal point, color in so many different ways with those layering stencils, or even cut it apart to create completely new designs. It's one of those products that really stretches your creativity, and every time I use it, I come up with a totally different idea. Now, this set has some absolutely gorgeous sentiments. We have four bold sentiments, which you also get coordinating dies for, along with the big medallion die, and also those little sub sentiments, which I think would be perfect for your card projects. For today's video, I'll be sharing two different cards that both start with this same stamped image. So you can see just how much variety you can get from this single bundle. You will see that the packaging includes few inspirations. So if you're not quite sure where to start, those samples are a great jumping off point and can really get your creativity flowing. The bundle includes this gorgeous detailed medallion stamp coordinating layering stencils and a matching die. So if coloring is more your style, you can absolutely bring this image to life with your alcohol markers, watercolors, colored pencils, or any other coloring medium, if not the layering stencils. The intricate design is beautiful on its own and it lends itself so many different techniques. Now, that's what I love the most about this bundle is that it gives you so much creative freedom, and depending on how you choose to color or use the image, you can achieve a completely different look every single time. I'll start by stamping the beautiful medallion image onto a piece of white cardstock. Now, this one fits perfectly within my stamp wheel. This time I stamped this image using embossing ink and heat embossed it with gold embossing powder, which gives the design such a gorgeous and elegant shine. Now, if you've watched my videos, you know how much I love adding embossing to my stamped images, but I usually reach out for black embossing or black ink when I'm stamping detailed images like this one. But today I decided to switch things up and go with gold instead. I love how instantly it adds a touch of elegance and really makes the intricate details of the medallion stand out. Now here I'm using the Altenew's gold embossing powder. Next, I make sure the embossing powder completely covers every bit of the stamped image. Since this design has so many beautiful intricate details, I like to take a quick look before heat embossing to make sure I haven't missed any areas. Once I'm happy with the coverage, I gently tap off the excess and funnel the remaining embossing powder right back into the container so it can be used again later. Now, once that's done, it's time for my absolute favorite part, that is watching the magic happen. It's time to heat set this beautiful embossing powder. But before I bring my heat tool to the paper, I always let it heat up for a few seconds because this is such a large image, and starting with a hot heat tool makes the embossing process so much more quicker and more even. As I heat the image, I keep the tool moving across the entire design instead of holding it over on one spot for too long. This helps the embossing powder melt smoothly without becoming overheated, and it also reduces the amount of heat concentrated in one area, which helps minimize warping of the paper. Now, taking these few extra seconds really makes a difference, especially when you're working with larger images like this one. If you do notice that your cardstock has warped a bit after all that heat embossing, don't worry, it's a very easy fix. Simply place your panel under a stack of heavy books or anything with a little weight to it and let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes. As the paper cools and rests under the weight, it will flatten out nicely, leaving you with a much smoother panel that's ready for the next step of your project. As much as I love coloring my stamped images with alcohol markers, I have to admit that having coordinating layering stencils is such a blessing. They make the coloring process so quick and effortless while still giving you a beautiful detailed result. For this image, we will be working with the three layered stencils, and for today's card, I decided to challenge myself with a color palette that I have never tried before. Now, instead of reaching for multiple ink families, I'm going to use just one ink set. This is the Mediterranean Glow Fresh Dye ink set by Altenew. Now, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you've probably seen me use these gorgeous green shades in several projects, but I usually pair them with bright florals or vibrant accent colors. But this time, I'm letting the greens take the center stage. By using these different shades from the same ink family, we will create a rich monochromatic look with plenty of depth and dimension. I absolutely love stepping outside my comfort zone with color combinations like this one, and I think the finished result turned out so elegant. Each of the stencils is numbered, so I started with stencil number one and went in with the lightest shade of green from the set, which is called Honeydew Glow. Now, it is such a beautiful soft green, almost leaning towards a warm yellow undertone, and I felt that this was perfect for the very first base layer of our design. Now, before I started the blending, I did mask off the edges of my cardstock and the stencil using some post-it notes. Now, this helps protect the rest of the panel or the background so that I don't accidentally get any ink where I don't want it. I also secure the stencil in place using my magnets so everything stays nice and steady while I'm working on it. Now for all the ink blending today, I'm using the small ink blending brushes by Altenew. I love these for the more detailed stencil work like this because they give you that really good control, especially when you're working with tighter areas of a design like this medallion. I made sure to create a beautiful gradient effect with the first stencil layer, starting light and then adding a bit more pressure towards the center of the image using the same honey glow ink. This helps build soft dimension without overwhelming the design. Once I finished with stencil number one, I moved on to stencil number two. For this one, I began with Honeydew Glow again as my base layer and that keeps everything consistent. And then after that, I brought in my second shade, which was Antique Olive, which is this deeper, richer green. Now, I absolutely love how both of these shades transition into each other. It creates such a smooth blend from soft to bold. And honestly, I feel like these greens pair beautifully with the gold embossed background. The combination just feels so elegant, balanced, and really timeless. For stencil number three, I bought in darker shades from the color palette, which are Olaf and Sugar Kelp. Now, what I really love about working within the same color family is how seamless the transition becomes. Even as you move from the lighter honeydew glow to the deeper greens, everything still feels connected and cohesive. There is no harsh shift, just a natural flow of color that builds beautiful depth and dimension across the entire medallion design. At this point, you could honestly stop here and just frame this entire piece as is. It would look absolutely stunning on its own. But I really wanted to share two different card ideas with you guys, so I went ahead and trimmed my panel right down the center of the design. I used my paper trimmer to get a clean, straight cut, making sure I was splitting the medallion evenly. It always feels a little bold to cut into a finished background like this one, but I love how it instantly gives you two separate focal point images to work with and opens up even more creative possibilities. For card number one, I decided to keep the design really simple and let the medallion do most of the work. I trimmed my panel down to 4 by 5 and quarter inches, which is slightly smaller than your standard A2 size card base, making sure I captured as much of that beautiful design as possible. I also left a bit of that clean white space along one of the edge, which is where we'll be adding our sentiment later. I find that being intentional with where you trim your panel really makes a difference. It helps balance the design and ensures everything feels evenly spaced and well composed on your card front. Now, even small adjustments like this can completely change how your finished card looks. So, I always like to take a moment here and plan that placement carefully before adhering anything down. So, that's the card front for card number one. Now, for our second card, I decided to take things in a slightly different direction and die cut that beautiful medallion. Now, even though it's just half of that design at this point, this is one of those images that's really easy to line up with the coordinating dies. Now, to make sure everything stayed in place, I secured the die with some washi tape so it wouldn't shift while running it through my die cutting machine. Once everything was aligned, I simply ran it through and it cut out that intricate medallion piece beautifully, ready to become the focal point for our card number two. To add a little extra interest and dimension, I decided to take the die cut piece and run it through a coordinating embossing folder that's again part of that bundle. Now, what I love about this step is that it's really easy to line up the design with the folder, so everything stays perfectly aligned. I then ran the sandwich through my die cutting machine, and it picked up the most beautiful embossed detail on top of that already stamped and ink blended piece. It just adds that extra layer of texture and really makes the medallion feel even more dimensional and elegant. So there we have it. Card number one featuring that beautiful stamped and ink blended panel as the main focal point of our design. Clean, simple, and really letting that medallion shine on its own. And then we also have our second piece, which is the die cut medallion with all that added embossed detail, still showcasing that gorgeous ink blending, but with so much more texture and dimension. And just like that, we've created two completely different looks from a single stamped image. This is exactly why I said right in the beginning that this is such a versatile bundle. It truly gives you endless creative possibilities depending on how you choose to use it. Now, while card number one was pretty much ready, I was still deciding what color base I wanted to use for our die cut piece. I was honestly torn between going for a simple white card panel, which would keep things light and clean and really let the design stand out, or switching things up completely and going with a black card base for that bold contrast. Both options were tempting for very different reasons, so I took a moment to look at the piece and see which direction would really make those greens and gold details pop the most. I did end up going with a white card panel as the main backdrop for my second card and added the black cardstock layer beneath the die cut piece as a soft shadow effect. Now, I really love how that bit of contrast helps the die cut medallion stand out even more while still keeping the overall design look clean and elegant. Well, I have to quickly apologize here. I think I may have missed hitting the record button on my phone, so I didn't capture all of that finishing steps for card number two. But you will still see me heat embossing the sentiment in gold. I stamped two sets of the sentiment for these cards. We have the larger celebrate sentiment, which I'll be die cutting later using the coordinating die, and we have the smaller sub sentiment that reads, "Wishing you a day filled with joy you deserve." Now, even though I missed a bit of the process, I think these finishing touches really bring the whole design together. I will just walk you through in detail about how I came about with the designs and the part of the video that I missed to record. Now, if you notice here, I added a bit of ink blending on both of the white panels. I used the same green shades from the set that we used on our stamped image and gently brought the color in around the edges to create that soft shaded frame. I just wanted to tone down all of that stark white on our panel. Now, it's a really simple step, but it helps tie everything together and makes the panel feel more cohesive with the main design. I also went in with some black and gold splatters on both of those panels to add a bit of extra interest. I love doing this finishing touch because it not only adds depth and movement to the entire design, but it also echoes the black and gold elements from our sentiments and the stamped and die cut medallion. It just brings everything together in such a beautiful, coordinated way. Before adhering my sentiments in place, I first glued my die cut medallion onto the darker ink blended portion of the panel. You could absolutely use foam tape here if you want for that even more depth and dimension, but I decided to go with liquid glue since I knew I would be building up the sentiment layers with foam tape instead. This way, I could balance out the dimension across the card without making everything look too bulky in just one area. Then, using foam tape, I popped up the large Celebrate sentiment on both our cards. This is one of my favorite ways to add emphasis on the sentiment because it instantly draws the eye and creates that beautiful dimensional focal point. I took a little extra time here to make sure everything was perfectly aligned on my panel using my T square ruler so that the placement stayed clean, straight, and evenly placed. One small trick I like to use when working with foam tape is adding just a tiny bit of liquid glue to the back. It gives me a bit of a wiggle room, which makes it so much more easier to adjust the sentiment placement before the adhesive fully sets. It's a simple step, but it really helps avoid any misalignment, especially when you're working with bold focal sentiments like this one. Now, finally, I went back in with the liquid glue to add the smaller sub-sentiment strips right underneath the main sentiment on each card. This helps ground the entire sentiment cluster and keeps everything feel intentional and well balanced. I always feel like these smaller sentiments are what really complete the story of a card, tying everything together while still keeping the focus on the main word. You could definitely go ahead and stamp these smaller sentiments on the insides of your card, but most of the times I usually keep the insides of my cards blank where I can write in my personal message. But this is another way to use up all those little sub sentiments that you have on your stamp set. Once that was done, I added some foam tape on both these panels and mounted them onto top folding A2 size card bases. And with that, both our cards are complete. What I love the most about this project is how one single stamped image gave us two completely different looks. One clean and simple, and the other one full of texture, dimension, and layered detail. It really shows how much versatility you can get from this beautiful arabesque medallion bundle, especially when you start mixing, stamping, heat embossing, stenciling, and die cutting everything in just one beautiful project. I hope this inspires you to look at your supplies a little differently and explore new ways to stretch your stamps beyond just one use. Sometimes all it takes is a little experimentation to discover endless possibilities. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more card making inspirations. I'll be sure to list down the supplies that I use to create these cards in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. What if you could create a stunning patriotic home decor with just paper? Let me show you how. Get ready for another non card project as we celebrate the 250th birthday of this beautiful country. Today I'll be creating a festive three-dimensional frame decor piece using the classic red, white and blue colors along with layered die cuts, textures and lots of fun details to bring everything to life. Hello crafty friends, I'm Revati and welcome back to my channel. If you love paper crafting beyond cards, you're going to enjoy this project. So grab your favorite supplies and let's dive right in as I show you exactly how I created this absolutely beautiful framed decor piece from start to finish. Well, I have to say I'm absolutely obsessed with the supplies from the June card kit by Simon. You'll definitely see me reaching out for several of those beautiful products from that kit in today's project. I will also be using these gorgeous stars and stripes sprinkle mix by Cat Scrappiness, which I thought was perfect finishing touch for our project. In fact, this sprinkle mix is what inspired the entire color palette for today's decor piece, featuring those classic red, white, and blue patriotic colors. To really bring in that fun, festive vibe, I decided to use the 3D popcorn box die along with the festive banner die, both from Simon the June card kit. I thought these elements were absolutely perfect for our patriotic celebration. And when I think of fireworks, parades, and holiday festivals, popcorn is always one of those classic treats that comes to my mind. So I knew I wanted to incorporate it into our decor piece today. The stamp set you see here is also part of the June kit, which, as I mentioned earlier, I have been absolutely loving it. It includes those adorable little firework images, which is what we'll be stamping on our background today, adding little pops of interest and helping to fill in some of those open spaces. To give the popcorn a more realistic look and plenty of texture, I'll be using the Simon's Heat and Fluff paint. I also reached out for these absolutely gorgeous alphabet dies from Sizzix to create our focal point sentiment for our project. I went ahead and die cut the letters USA from white cardstock three times each. By stacking the layers together, I can create a nice thick chipboard like letters that really stand out against the background. It's such a simple technique, but it adds so much dimension and gives the finished piece a beautiful polished look. To keep the video moving along, I also went ahead and did some die cutting off camera. I also cut all of that popcorn pieces and the festive banner pieces from white cardstock so they'd be ready for ink blending and assembly later on. I also die cut the banner string using black cardstock, which creates a nice contrast and helps the banners stand out once everything is put together. I have to admit, up until this point, I was fully planning on turning all these elements into a card, but somewhere along the way, inspiration stuck and I completely changed my mind. The more I looked at all of those die cuts and the embellishments, the more I felt they deserved to be displayed as a home decor piece instead. Luckily, I had this very simple 4 by 6-inch frame that I picked up from my local dollar store, and I thought it would be absolutely perfect for this project. I love finding inexpensive frames like these because they make it so easy to transform your paper crafting into something you can display around your home or even give as a handmade gift. To create the base of our design, I trimmed a piece of white cardstock to be 4 by 6 inches so that it would fit perfectly inside the frame. This will serve as our main canvas, giving us plenty of room to build up all the layers, textures, and the dimensional elements while keeping everything nice and secure inside the frame. I chose to die cut all of my elements from white cardstock because it gives me complete freedom to customize the colors. Instead of being limited by the colored cardstock, I can ink blend each piece to match my project perfectly. For today's patriotic decor piece, I'll be working with the beautiful shades of red and blue to really capture that classic festive feel. Now I'm going to start by coloring the USA letters. I absolutely love the font and those intricate detailings on these dies. They are bold enough to stand out as the main focal point while still having lots of beautiful detail that catches the eye. To make ink blending easier, I place the letters onto my ultra sticky mat to hold them securely in place. And for colors, I'll be using lumberjack plaid and faded jeans distress ink. These two shades complement each other beautifully and create that iconic patriotic color palette. I started with the red on top of the letters and gradually built up the color before blending in that beautiful blue, creating a vibrant finish that really brings these letters to life. I bought the red ink in about halfway across each letters, making sure not to blend all the way through the center. After finishing one side, I carefully lifted each of those letters and repositioned it on a different area on my ultra sticky mat. This helps prevents the inks from transferring onto the ink blending brush and more importantly keeps my blending brush from getting contaminated with the opposite color. Now once the red was finished, I switched over to the faded jeans and blended the blue onto the opposite side of each of those letters. I was careful not to let the two colors overlap because I wanted to preserve a thin strip of white cardstock running right through the center of each of those letters. That little bit of white creates that clean separation between the colors and gives the letters a crisp, bold look that fits the patriotic theme perfectly. With all the ink blending complete, I moved on to assembling the letters. I adhered the three die cut layers together, and what a difference that makes. Those extra layers add so much dimension and gives the letters a sturdy, more chipboard like feel. It's a simple step that really elevates the finished decor piece and helps the sentiments stand out beautifully against our background. The reason I chose to start with a sentiment was because I knew I wanted a little extra sparkle to it. Once all of the ink blending was completed, I applied a thin layer of glue over the front of each of those letters on the lower part, basically on the blue part, and sprinkled some of the rock candy fine glitter to give them a beautiful shimmer. I wanted to keep this step first so that the glue would have plenty of time to dry while I worked on the rest of the project. That way, I wouldn't have to stop midway through and wait for the glitter to set before moving on. By the time we finish creating all of our other elements and start assembling everything together, the glue will be completely dry and the glitter will be securely adhered and the letters will be ready to become the sparkling focal point of our finished decor piece. I think that little touch of shimmer really added that right amount of festive sparkle and really makes the sentiment pop. I applied just a tiny bit of glue along the edges of each of those alphabets, making sure not to overdo it. Then I gently smudged the glue with my finger so it created a thin, even layer. This helps the glitter stick nicely without clumping or creating thick, uneven spots. Once that was done, I dipped each letter directly into the container of the rock candy glitter. Now, this is honestly is one of my favorite and the easiest ways to add sparkle to small die cut pieces because it gives such a beautiful, even shimmer without a lot of fuzz. Now, to make the process even more easier and less messy, I like to hold each of those pieces using my reverse tweezers. It gives me a much better grip on those tiny letters and keeps my fingers free from glue and glitter. Definitely a small tool that makes a big difference in projects like these. I absolutely love how these turned out. You could definitely cover the entire alphabet with glitter if you wanted that full sparkle effect, but I decided to add glitter just to the lower part of each of those letters. I set the letters aside to dry while I moved on to the rest of the elements. Next, I placed all of the popcorn pieces and the banners onto my ultra sticky mat so I could begin with my ink blending. I'll be working with both red and blue tones for these as well to keep everything cohesive in that patriotic theme. I started by adding a touch of lumberjack plaid all over the pieces, making sure each popcorn piece and three of those banners got that warm red tone. Just like I did with the alphabet, once I finished the red ink, I carefully moved all the pieces to the clean section of my sticky mat. This keeps the colors from mixing and also prevents any unwanted transfer onto my tools. Then I went in with the faded jeans and added the blue tones to all of the pieces, completing that classic red, white, and blue look that ties everything together beautifully. Usually, I would reach for a soft yellow or a warm buttery tone when coloring popcorns to keep it looking more realistic. But for this project, I decided to take a slightly different approach and use a mix of red and blue instead. It felt like a fun, unexpected twist that still ties in beautifully with the overall patriotic theme. Next, I wanted to add a little bit of white back into the popcorn to really bring out that patriotic color palette and enhance the texture. For this, I decided to use the Heat and Fluff paint, which I have also used in some of my previous projects. Now, what I do is simply add tiny little dots of the paint onto each of those popcorn pieces. Then I bring in my heat tool and heat set them. Now, one important thing to remember is to make sure your heat tool is fully heated up before you start. So you get that proper puffing effect right away. Now, as the paint begins to activate, it creates that soft, fluffy, dimensional texture that really makes the popcorn look more fun and playful. I like to hold each piece with my reverse tweezers while heating. It makes the process so much more easier, keeps my fingers safe from the heat, and allows me to move the piece around as needed so every bit of it puffs up beautifully. This step really brings the popcorn to life and adds that extra bit of whimsy and texture to the overall design. I repeated the same process for all the popcorn pieces so that all of them have that fun, fluffy, dimensional texture. We'll be using every single one of them in our finished project to build that playful layered look. Now, at this point, you could absolutely go back and lightly brush some of that blue or red ink on the fluffed up popcorn using your blending brushes. That would give them a more tinted, coordinating look and tie them even more into the color palette. But for this project, I decided to leave them white. I really like the contrast it created against the bold red and blue elements, and it just helps keep that classic patriotic feel while also letting the texture stand out on its own. Moving on to the popcorn box, I wanted to add those classic stripe details that you usually see on your traditional popcorn packaging. But instead of sticking to just one color, I thought it would be fun to incorporate both the red and the blue stripes to keep everything consistent with the theme. The stamp actually includes the striped image that makes this step super easy and gives a nice clean result. I placed my white die cut popcorn box piece onto my stamp wheel so I could get everything perfectly aligned before stamping. I started by inking the lower portion of the stripe with the lumberjack plaid, carefully applying it only to the bottom section of the design. Then, for the upper portion of the stripes, I switched over to faded jeans and inked that section separately. Now, this created a beautiful two tone effect where the red and the blue meet in the middle, giving that subtle blended transition along the popcorn box. I absolutely love how this little detail ties everything together and adds so much more visual interest while still keeping the design clean and cohesive. I folded the popcorn box along the score lines and applied a thin line of liquid glue along the edge to seal it into shape. Now, I always like using liquid glue for this step because it gives me enough working time to adjust everything and make sure that the box comes together really neatly. Now, these score lines are created using the die itself, so you don't have to worry about where to fold to create these beautiful box details. Now, once the box was assembled and secured, I moved on to the fun part, which is adding all those little fluffy popcorn pieces. I first adhered the base layer of each of those popcorn pieces into the box, building the foundation for our design. I then layered the fluffy, heat embossed popcorn pieces on top to create that dimensional textured look. For some of those pieces, I used liquid glue for that flat, secure hold, while for others, I added some foam tape underneath to give it a little bit of an extra lift and dimension. I love mixing both techniques because it creates a more dynamic, layered effect and makes certain popcorn pieces pop forward beautifully against our background. I also placed one of the popcorn pieces slightly outside the striped area just to give an illusion that the popcorn is overflowing from our box. I really love adding little storytelling details like this. It instantly makes the design feel more playful and dimensional. To finish off that section, I added the small oval piece as an embellishment for the popcorn box. It acts like a little decorative label and helps balance the design beautifully. Now, to tie everything together, I also layered in one of those beautiful star sequences from the Stars and Stripes sprinkle mix. That tiny sparkle element adds just the right amount of shine and brings in that festive, celebratory feel while complementing all the red, white, and blue details throughout the project. Isn't our popcorn box just absolutely adorable? I am honestly so happy with how all those little beautiful details came together. And with the popcorn box all finished, we can now move on to our little banners. Now, I had six banner pieces in total, and I split them between the two colors. We have three inked in red and the other three in blue. Now, to add a bit more detail and interest, I pulled out those small sparkle style stamp images from the stamp set. I stamped each of those banners with the opposite color to create a nice contrast and give them a bit more visual texture. Now, so that means that the red banners got touches of the blue sparkle and the blue banners got stamped with red. I love how this simple step adds just the extra layer of dimension and ties everything together so beautifully. I then threaded all of the banners into the black die cut string piece, spacing them out evenly so that they drape nicely and have that playful festive look. I really love how the simple step instantly brings movement into the design and makes the whole banner feel more dynamic. And well, with that, both of our focal point elements are now complete. I'm absolutely loving how this piece came together. The colors, the texture, and all those layered details are working together so beautifully. Now, all that's left is to build our background and bring everything together into a frame. This is the part where the entire project really starts to come to life, and I can't wait to assemble it all and see the finished decor piece come together. I started by stamping the little firework images onto our background panel, keeping the same red and blue color palette to stay consistent with the rest of the project. I love how these small firework details instantly add movement and the absolutely gorgeous feel to our design. Usually, I would reach out for my regular stamp block for something like this, but since I am still getting comfortable with layering and double stamping especially with the distress inks, I decided to use my Sizzix stamp and stencil attachment instead. It's such a handy tool because it makes positioning and repeating images so much more easier, especially when you want to build a pattern or layered stamped images. Now, if I were using my stamp wheel, I would have needed to move the paper each time to get the right placement. But with this tool, I can keep my cardstock in place and simply reposition the stamp itself, which gives me a lot more control. I began with a larger firework image and stamped it 3 times using the lumberjack plaid. Once that layer was complete, I went in with the faded jeans and stamped the second set of fireworks right over and around the red ones. This layering creates a really fun overlapping effect and adds depth to the background while still keeping everything cohesive in our red, white, and blue theme. At this point, I'm really happy with how the overall decor piece is coming together. All the colors, textures, and the little details are finally starting to feel cohesive, and it's actually the look that I was going for. Now, I went ahead and layered both the banner and the little popcorn die cut onto our background panel. I was very intentional about the placement here, especially with the popcorn pieces, because I wanted to make sure that I had left enough open space in the center so that our USA alphabets can sit nicely as the main focal point without feeling crowded. Now, to add dimension and really make these elements stand out from the background, I used foam tape behind both the banner and the popcorn cluster. Now, I love using foam tapes at this stage because it instantly lifts everything up and adds that beautiful shadow detail, which really enhances all of that layering we've built so far. Now, I'll admit if I were creating a card, I wouldn't have added so much dimension to each of these pieces just because if I plan on mailing it out, I don't want to add any extra postage or have a bulky envelope. Now, once all these were in place, everything is starting to take shape and the design is ready for the final focal element to bring it all together. I then adhered the USA alphabets right next to the popcorn box using liquid glue to secure them in place. I didn't worry too much about getting everything perfectly straight. In fact, I intentionally placed them slightly offset. I really love that subtle bit of misalignment because it adds more relaxed, handcrafted feel to the design rather than looking too rigid and overly perfect. Once the letters were in place, I went back in with the same sparkle stamp that I used on the banners. Using both the red and the blue ink, I added little scattered sparkles all around the background. I made sure to distribute them evenly across the panel so the entire piece feels festive and full of movement. This final touch really ties everything together and gives the whole decor piece that extra celebratory energy while keeping the focus balanced across all of our elements. At this point, I felt it would be perfect to add a small sub sentiment to complete the design and wish a very happy birthday to this absolutely beautiful country. So I reached out for the happy birthday sentiment from Nature's Magic set by Altenew. I really love how small and delicate the font is. It's subtle enough that it doesn't compete with the main focal point elements, but still adds that meaningful finishing touch to our project. I stamped the sentiment using black ink and then sprinkled some clear embossing powder over it. After heat setting it, the sentiment became beautifully glossy and slightly raised, which gives it a nice polished finish. To tie it in with the rest of the design, I lightly ink blended both red and blue over the sentiment strip, echoing the same color palette that I used throughout the project. Finally, once the sentiment strip was inked and trimmed, I adhered it right under the USA alphabets, tucked neatly next to the popcorn box so it feels grounded within the composition while still remaining visible as a supporting detail. And with that, our main piece was complete. Now, all that's left was to frame it. Now, because there was so much dimension and layering into this design, I decided to remove the glass from the frame and place my panel inside directly. This way, nothing gets squished, and all of those raised elements can really stand out and maintain their full dimension. Well, at that point, I realized I wasn't really loving the original beige color of the frame. It felt too light compared to those bold reds, blues, and blacks in the design. And it just didn't feel as cohesive as I wanted it to be. So off camera, I went ahead and added black ink, black color around the frame to deepen the color and tie it into the overall piece. That simple change made such a big difference. It instantly grounded the entire design and helped everything feel more intentional and unified. I love how that darker frame now enhances all the vibrant details inside instead of just competing with it. Well, this framed piece celebrating the 250th birthday of the United States wouldn't feel complete without a little shine, bling, and sparkle to finish it off. So, for the final touch, you'll see me adding those tiny star embellishments, confetti sequences all around the frame. I love this step because it instantly brings the whole piece to life, catching the light, adding movement, and giving that true celebratory feel. It's such a simple addition, but it makes a huge difference in pulling everything together and enhancing that festive firework filled energy we've built throughout the entire project. And with that, our framed decor piece celebrating the 250th birthday of this absolutely beautiful country is finished. I absolutely love how this project came together, from the layered ink blending and textured popcorn elements to the dimensional banner and sparkling accents. Every detail worked together to build a festive, patriotic scene that feels full of energy and movement and, well, celebration. What started out as a simple idea quickly evolved into a dimensional framed piece, and I really enjoyed experimenting with the different techniques along the way, especially the heat fluff and texture, the glitter accents, and the layering of all those little die cut pieces for extra depth. I hope this inspires you to look at your dies and stamps a little differently and maybe even turn your next card project into a home decor piece. I'll be sure to link all the supplies that I used to create this piece in the description box below. Please note that all of those links will be affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe and wishing you all a very happy 4th of July. Do you think watercolors have to be neat and controlled? Well, think again, because today I'm sharing the easiest way to combine watercolors with an embossed image by embracing the mess. Using simple watercolor smush techniques over an embossed background, I will create a vibrant, one of a kind card that's both easy and fun. This video is also part of the Altenew Ambassador Instagram giveaway, so be sure to check the description box below for the giveaway details and your chance to participate. Well, hello everyone, I'm Revati and welcome to my crafty space. Let's get started. For today's card, I wanted to step outside my usual floral design, so I reached for this fun geometric elements stamp set from Altenew. Now, although it's one of their older stamp sets, it's still incredibly versatile and it even has coordinating dies. Now, the set is filled with some unique geometric images that are perfect for creating beautiful repeating patterns on your card fronts. There are so many creative ways you could use this. You can follow the same watercolor technique that I'm sharing today, or you could stamp and die cut each of those geometric elements individually, then arrange and adhere them onto your card front to create a striking modern geometric design. The possibilities of this particular stamp sets are endless. I usually reach for the Altenews watercolor brush markers whenever I'm watercoloring, but today I decided to give this 36 watercolor pan set a try, and I have to say I'm absolutely in love with it. Now, this is a new one that I have, so I was really excited to use this. Now, the set includes 36 vibrant half pan watercolors housed in a beautiful, sturdy, and convenient plastic case. It even comes with a water brush that fits neatly inside, making it perfect for crafting on the go. Now, one feature I really appreciate is that the lid doubles as a mixing palette, so you can easily blend custom shades without needing any extra supplies. It's such a thoughtfully designed set and incredibly convenient to use. The packaging also includes a color chart that showcases all the 36 watercolor shades along with their names, making it easy to identify and keep tracks of colors that you're using. That's especially helpful if you want to recreate the color combination on a future project. While you can certainly mix and customize colors while using the built-in palette, well, I am keeping things very simple for our card today. This is one of those techniques that is incredibly beginner friendly, and you definitely don't need any experienced watercolor artist to achieve these beautiful results. The beauty of this technique is that it embraces a loose and playful approach, allowing the colors to blend naturally and create unique effects with very little effort. I started by arranging the stamps onto a piece of watercolor cardstock, positioning the design diagonally across the left side of the panel. As I placed each of those images, I made sure that the geometric shapes lined up neatly with the adjacent ones to create a seamless pattern. Next, I stamped these images using a white pigment ink and then added white heat embossing powder to give that beautiful embossed effect. Now, this step creates a beautiful raised outline that helps define the design once we add our fun watercolors. Now, you could definitely add black embossing powder or even clear embossing powder. Once you add the watercolor, all that embossed image will resist the ink, which means that your image will not get lost between all that beautiful colors. Now, if you're new to stamping or new to card making altogether, don't let this embossing intimidate you. You can absolutely skip this step and go straight to the watercolor smoosh technique that I'll be demonstrating next. You'll still end up with a gorgeous abstract background, and it is a beautiful way to ease into watercoloring while having fun with the process. Now, even though watercolor cardstock is much more thicker than your regular cardstock, I still like to take a few extra precautions when heat embossing. I always let my heat tool warm up for a second before bringing it to the paper. That way, the embossing powder melts much more quickly, reducing the amount of heat applied to the cardstock. As I'm heat setting the embossing powder, I also keep the heat tool moving continuously instead of holding it in one spot. This helps minimize any warping and keeps the watercolor panel as flat as possible. Now for the really fun part, which is watercolor smushing. Now one of the easiest way I found to create this look is by applying the watercolor onto a piece of clear plastic. This is actually an old piece of packaging that I saved from my stash. I never throw these away because they are the perfect for ink smushing technique. This technique isn't limited just to watercolors, or you could do it beautifully with your ink pads, giving you a completely different but equally gorgeous effect. Now, since this is a fairly messy technique, I like to keep everything organized in the beginning. So I have my watercolor panel placed right in the center of my workspace, my watercolor palette off to the left, and my plastic sheet onto the right. Having everything within easy reach makes the process quick, fun, and, well, a lot less messy. Alteneu also offers watercolor tubes, and those are another fantastic option for this technique. They are much more heavily pigmented, so a little goes a long way. I actually have another video where I used watercolor tubes to create a similar background, so if you'd like to see them in action, be sure to check that video as well. Now, for today's card, I decided to use my all time favorite color combination, which is pink and orange. There's something so cheerful and comforting about these two colors together, and they always make me smile. So I began by picking up a light shade of pink with my paintbrush and applied it onto the plastic sheet. Then I gave it a light spritz of water to activate the pigment and help spread it out even more. Now, once I was happy with the consistency, all I did was simply picked up the plastic sheet and pressed it onto my watercolor panel, transferring all of that beautiful color. Now, the intensity of the color or the pigment or the amount of water that you use definitely depends on the look that you're going for. I just wanted a lot more splotchy effect, a lot more watery effect, and I noticed that more the water you use, more smoother results you get. I didn't want any harsh lines on this panel. Well, for this design, I'm concentrating the color only around the stamped geometric images rather than covering the entire panel. You'll notice the pink stays mostly in the upper left hand corner while the orange is added towards the lower portion of the panel, creating a soft diagonal flow of color across the design. I repeated the same exact process with the pink, adding a second layer to build up the color and create a little more depth and vibrancy. Before moving on to the orange, I made sure to thoroughly clean both my paintbrush and the plastic sheet. This helps keep the colors nice and crisp without accidentally mixing the pink and orange. And as a bonus, taking a few moments to clean everything also gives the watercolor panel enough time to dry before you begin adding the next color. Now, another way to do this technique is to place the watercolor directly onto your craft mat or your work surface and then turn your panel upside down to pick up the color. That method works beautifully too, but I personally prefer using a clear plastic sheet because it's transparent. I can see exactly where the color is going in relation to my stamped images. It gives me much more control over the placement of the watercolor, making it easier to build the design exactly where I want it to. Once I was happy with the two layers of the pink and orange, I decided to take the background a step further by adding another layer of color. This time, instead of using the same shades, I reached for slightly deeper tones of both the pink and the orange. Adding darker shades on top helps bring in more dimension and makes the color feel richer without losing that soft watercolor effect. I repeated the same ink smooshing process, applying the darker watercolor onto my plastic sheet, adding a little bit of water to loosen the pigment, and then carefully transferring it onto my panel. Now, since I wanted to maintain control over the placement of the colors, I continued to add the darker shades only in the areas where I wanted a little more intensity. Now, before adding this additional layer, I made sure my panel was completely dry. This little bit of patience really helps when building up watercolor layers because the colors blend much more smoothly and don't become too muddy. Now, it also allows you to see exactly where you need more color and where you want to preserve those beautiful lighter areas. Now, what I love the most about this background is the way all that color transitions together. We don't just have that beautiful blend between the pink and orange areas, but within each color itself, there's a lovely variation from the light to the darker tones. The softer pinks gradually deepen into richer pink tones, and the same happens with the orange, thereby creating a beautiful layered watercolor effect. Now it's time to add some fun splatters. Well, I picked up some of that black watercolor with my paintbrush, making sure to load the paintbrush with enough pigment and water. Now, instead of waiting for the panel to dry completely, I decided to add the splatters while the watercolor background was still slightly damp. The reason is that I wanted to create a softer, more organic look. When you splatter on damp surface, the black watercolor slightly blooms and spreads into the background, giving you the most beautiful splotchy, imperfect marks. This creates a more blended artistic feel rather than those crisp, defined splatters you would get on your completely dry panel. I just love how this little detail adds contrast to the bright pink and orange background while still keeping that loose, playful watercolor feel. I then moved on to creating my sentiment. I stamped the word hello from the same stamp set onto a piece of black cardstock and white heat embossed it to make it really stand out against that dark background. Once it was heat set, I trimmed it down into a small sentiment strip. Now, since I already had my paper trimmer out, I also decided to trim down my watercolor panel. I cut it to 4 by 5 and quarter inches, which is slightly smaller than your standard A2 size card front. Now, this gives the panel a nice border when it's adhered onto the card base and helps the watercolor background really become the focal point of our design. I absolutely love how this panel turned out, and I can't wait to try this technique with a different color combination. Let me know in the comments below what colors would you like to see me try next. I then went ahead and adhered my sentiment strip right in the center of that little rectangle, making sure it's positioned nicely over the colorful watercolor background. I love how that simple black and white sentiment creates that beautiful contrast against all those vibrant shades of pink and orange while allowing the geometric design to still shine through. Next, I mounted the entire watercolor panel onto a top folding A2 size card base using foam tape. A little bit of height from the foam tape adds that extra touch of interest and gives the card a more finished and dimensional look. Well, a simple and fun technique is never complete without a little bit of sparkle. I pulled out some of my favorite stellar sequences and added a few around the sentiment to bring in that extra touch of shine and dimension. I love how these little embellishments catch the light and complement the vibrant watercolor background without taking away from the beautiful geometric design. And well, with that final touch of bling, our card is complete. And with that, our watercolor smush geometric card is complete. I hope you enjoy this fun, beginner friendly technique. And well, don't forget this video is part of the Alternate Ambassador Instagram giveaway. So be sure to check the description box for all the giveaway details and information, along with the supply list. And I will have links to all the supplies that I used to create this particular card. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Think you need watercolors to get that beautiful watercolor look? Well, think again. Today I'm creating a gorgeous watercolor panel without using a single watercolor paint. Instead, I'll show you how to turn your distress ink pads into beautiful watercolor palettes to color this stunning image from the latest Sizzix birthday release. Hi everyone, I'm Revati and welcome to my crafty space. Sizzix is celebrating its 25th birthday with an incredible collection of new products, and today I'll be using this absolutely gorgeous birthday bloom stamp set designed by Willow Wolf. Now, this set includes 10 beautiful nature inspired images. We have a lovely happy birthday sentiment, some gorgeous floral bouquets, sweet little hummingbirds, butterflies, and even an adorable little bunny. Now, be sure to head over to the Sizzix website and join the 25th birthday celebration, where you'll find exciting new product launches, amazing savings, and plenty of fun prizes throughout that celebration. Well, I'm going to be stamping almost every image from this beautiful set onto a watercolor panel to create one large whimsical garden scene. Now, since summer is in full bloom here in Seattle, I thought this design would be perfect way to capture what I get to enjoy right outside my window almost every day. We have gorgeous flowers blooming everywhere, tiny little hummingbirds darting from flower to flower, colorful butterflies fluttering through our garden, and every now and then we do get little bunnies hopping around the hill in our backyard. It is such a peaceful and inspiring sight, so I wanted to bring a little bit of that summer magic into my card today. To get started, I place my watercolor panel onto the Sizzix stamping platform. One feature I absolutely love is the sticky backing surface. It keeps the panel securely in place so nothing shifts while I'm arranging and stamping all of these images. Once I was happy with the layout, I ran my anti-static powder tool over the entire panel since I plan on heat embossing all these images. This quick step helps prevent any stray embossing powder from sticking where I don't want it to, giving me a nice crisp embossed line that will make watercoloring so much more easier in our next step. Once I was happy with the placement of all the stamps, I inked them up using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now, since it's a pigment ink, it stays wet long enough to hold the embossing powder beautifully, making it perfect for heat embossing. To make sure I got a nice crisp impression, I stamped the images twice using the stamp platform. That's one of the biggest advantages of using a stamp positioner. You can easily re-ink and stamp again without worrying about anything shifting. Now, just before I was sprinkling on the embossing powder, I realized there were a few empty spaces on my panel. Now, my original vision was to create one continuous lush floral scene. So instead of leaving those gaps, I simply rearranged a few of those stamps to fill in the open spaces. Well, thanks to the sticky surface on this Sizzix stamping platform, my panel stayed perfectly in place while I moved the stamps around. I inked them up again with the VersaFine pigment ink and stamped those additional images to complete the composition. Now, the entire panel feels full, balanced, and ready for the next step. Once all of the images were stamped, I carefully lifted the panel out of the stamping platform, making sure not to touch any of that freshly stamped image since the pigment ink stays wet for a while. I then covered the entire panel with clear embossing powder, tapped off the excess, and then melted it off with my heat tool until all of those beautiful black lines turned nice and glossy. Now, even though I'm working with a watercolor panel, which is much thicker than your regular cardstock, I still like to take a few extra precautions to minimize warping. Before I begin the heat embossing process, I let my heat tool warm up completely. That way, I'm applying heat for a shorter amount of time. I also place my panel on top of a cork mat, which helps absorb some of that heat from underneath and keep the heat tool moving continuously instead of holding it at one spot for too long. It wasn't until I finished all of that heat embossing and was ready to start coloring that I noticed that I completely missed off stamping the Y in birthday. Thankfully, it's an easy fix, so don't worry, we'll come back and take care of it at the very end. Now it's time for my favorite part for today's project, that is creating our own watercolor palette using distress ink pads. This is such a fun technique because you get beautiful look of watercolor without needing actual watercolor paints. I'm keeping the coloring process nice and simple. There is no complicated shading techniques or advanced coloring skills involved here. My goal is to simply enjoy the coloring process by picking up individual colors and painting each of the flowers, leaves, hummingbirds, butterflies, and all of the other little details. Sometimes simple coloring is all you need to create a beautiful finished piece. Now, to create my watercolor panel, I simply pressed or smooshed my distress ink pad directly onto my glass mat. Now, if you don't own a glass mat, don't worry at all. You can use a smooth plastic packaging that comes with your craft supplies, an acrylic block, a craft sheet, or any other non porous slick surface. That little puddle of ink instantly becomes your watercolor palette. Now, before I start painting, I lightly misted it with a bit of water. This thins out the ink slightly, making it flow much more like your traditional watercolor. It also prevents me from picking up overly concentrated color on my paintbrush, giving me much softer, more controlled washes as I start bringing this beautiful garden scene to life. I'll have the complete list of all the distress ink colors that I used linked in the description box below in case you'd like to recreate this color palette. For my flowers, I chose a beautiful combination of pink shades while the leaves were colored using a couple of different shades of greens to add a little bit more of that natural variation. When it comes to the hummingbirds and the butterflies, I decided to have a little more fun with the blending as I mixed two colors together on each of those. That was purely a personal choice. I wanted those tiny creatures to really stand out against our floral background. And one of the things I love the most about this technique is that it's incredibly forgiving. You can keep it simple, as I am doing here with just basic washes of color, or if you're more experienced with watercoloring, you can absolutely take it a step further by adding shadows, highlights, and extra layers of colors. There really isn't a right or wrong way to do it. Just enjoy the process and let your creativity guide you as you bring this beautiful garden scene to life. Once all the images were colored, I wanted to add a little more depth and interest to the background. To do that, I created a very soft wash using the lightest shade of pink from my Distress ink collection. I simply smooshed the ink pad onto my glass mat once or twice, added plenty of water, and then mixed it together to create a very diluted color. Using a larger paintbrush, I began applying that soft pink wash across the entire background. My goal wasn't to create a perfectly even layer of color. In fact, I wanted the background to feel loose, natural, and organic, so I intentionally worked in a very relaxed manner. I wasn't overly concerned about staying perfectly within the margins around the stamped images, and I allowed the color to flow naturally around all the flowers and critters. As the panel dried, there were some areas that ended up with slightly deeper concentration of that pink, while other areas remained much lighter because of that little extra water. Those subtle variations in the colors are actually one of my favorite parts of this watercoloring. The soft transition create movement and interest in the background without competing with the focal point images. I absolutely love how this panel has come together. The colors feel so soft and dreamy, and that subtle pink wash in the background adds the perfect touch of warmth without taking away from that beautiful stamped images. It almost feels like a little summer garden captured on paper. Now, to add a little more texture and interest to this otherwise simple background, I decided to bring in some splatters. And the fun part is, we are going to use our distress inks for this step as well. Now, just like we created watercolor palette earlier, these inks work beautifully as splatter mediums too. I simply smooshed a little bit of that pink and yellow distress ink onto my glass mat, added a touch of water, and picked up the diluted color with my paintbrush. Then, with a few gentle taps of my paintbrush, I added splatters all over the panel. I feel those tiny pops of color add so much character and help tie the entire design together while keeping that soft, whimsical watercolor feel. Remember that little missing Y in the birthday that I noticed earlier? Well, it's time to fix that little mistake. I simply used a black gel pen to carefully complete the letter, and just like that, our sentiment is back to looking perfect. And honestly, this is one of those little crafting moments that reminds us not everything has to be perfect from the very beginning. Sometimes a tiny fix like this is all you need, and now this little secret stays just between me and all of you watching the video. Unless you were here for the process, no one would ever know there was a missing letter in the very first place. Coming back to our card, I felt like this beautiful watercolor scene needed a little bit of extra sparkle and shine to complete it. So I bought out my metallic watercolors and added some delicate gold splatters all across the panel. Yes, I didn't have any gold ink pads, so this is what we are working with. These touches of shimmer catch the light beautifully and add an elegant finish to the soft watercolor background. I also used the gold watercolor to create a thin border around the entire panel. This simple detail instantly elevated the design and gave it a beautiful vintage, almost framed picture look. I absolutely love how the warmth of that gold complements the soft pinks and greens in the scene. It felt like this entire garden moment had been captured inside a little golden frame, making the finished piece feel extra special. Lately, I've been creating quite a few pieces of artwork and framed projects, so when I looked at this finished panel, I honestly felt like it deserved to be framed as well. The soft watercolors, that beautiful little green details, golden border almost make it feel like a miniature piece of artwork. But since we included the happy birthday sentiment in this design, I knew this one was meant to be a beautiful handmade card. Although I have to admit, if that sentiment wasn't there, I would have been very tempted to turn this into another framed piece for my craft room. Once all of that watercolor was completely dry, I then went ahead and added some foam tape and adhered the panel onto a top folding A2 size card base. This gives the card a sturdy foundation while allowing that beautiful watercolor scene to take center stage. And with that, our beautiful watercolor inspired birthday card is complete. I absolutely love how this entire panel came together, from creating our own watercolor palettes using the distress inks to that soft floral scene, delicate splatters, and those little detailed touches of gold that added the perfect amount of elegance to this card. Now, this card was such a joy to create, and it feels extra special because we are celebrating an amazing milestone. A very happy 25th birthday to Sizzix. Wishing Sizzix many more years of creativity, innovation, and inspiring crafters around the world with your beautiful products. Well, I will be sure to link all the supplies that I used to create this beautiful card in the description box below. Please note that all of those links will be affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. What if I told you this clean and simple card was created using one of the easiest but also one of the messiest watercoloring techniques? Stick around because you're going to love how simple this is. Hello, crafty friends. I'm Revati and welcome to my crafty space. In today's video, I'll show you how I used a fun, effortless watercoloring technique to create this beautiful, clean, and simple card. Don't worry if you've never tried watercolors before. This beginner friendly method is easy to follow, incredibly relaxing, and gives gorgeous results every time. So grab your favorite supplies and let's get started. Well, before I get started, I had a little surprise offer for you guys. Now, if you're watching this video and planning to do a little crafty shopping, you can save $5 on orders of $55 or more by using my discount code REVATI5OFF at checkout. Be sure to check the description box below for all the details. And well, now let's jump right into our project. The two main products we'll be using for today's project are the Zero Waste Fluttering Fantasies layering die set and, well, the star of the show, this absolutely gorgeous Altenew watercolor set. Now, this is actually my very first time using the Fluttering Fantasies dies, and I couldn't wait to see all the beautiful butterflies that it created. Now, as soon as I opened the package, I found this large zero waste die that cuts out all the beautiful butterflies in one single pass. along with a smaller die that cuts out the butterfly bodies. Now, I love how thoughtfully Alteneu designed the packaging. It even shows how you can layer these butterflies together and includes a few inspiring cardstock color combinations to spark your creativity. Well, instead of reaching out for those colorful cardstocks today, I'm going to do something a little different. We will be bringing these butterflies to life with watercolors, creating soft blends and unique color combination that make every butterfly one of a kind. So this watercolor palette, it includes 36 beautifully curated colors. So whether you love bright florals, soft pastels or rich earthy tones, you'll have plenty of options right at your fingertips. The paints are wonderfully vibrant, they are highly pigmented and reactivate beautifully with just a little bit of water, making them incredibly easy to work with. They blend smoothly, layer effortlessly, and are perfect for creating soft washes or adding more intense color to your projects. Now, I will be using the Altenews watercolor panel for my project today, and cut out a panel that is roughly the size of the zero waste die that we will be using. For today's project, we will be creating our own custom watercolor panel using one of the easiest techniques I know, which is ink smushing. Now, you've probably seen me use this technique before with ink pads to create a faux watercolor background, but today we are taking it a step further by using actual watercolors to do the smushing instead. The only extra supply you'll need is one small piece of plastic packaging or any acetate sheet. Of course, you could simply paint your background directly with a paintbrush, adding different colors and varying the intensity across the panel, but I wanted to embrace the fun, unpredictable side of watercolors. And also, since we are doing an absolute beginner friendly technique, this is the best way to start with your watercolors. Now, instead of creating a neat, defined brushstrokes, I decided to get a little messy and let the colors blend naturally. The smooshing technique creates beautiful, organic, soft transitions and unexpected color mixes that would be difficult to achieve with a paintbrush alone. Now, every lift and every press gives you a unique result, making each background completely one of a kind. And that's exactly what I love about this technique. I started by activating my watercolors with a little clean water and then picked up a few shades of pinks using a large round brush. Now, I prefer using larger brushes for this technique because it holds a lot more water and pigment, allowing me to cover the palette quickly and making the whole process much more faster. You could absolutely use watercolor tubes for this technique as well, but personally, I prefer these half pans because they are easy to control. Watercolor tubes dispense a lot of pigment at once, which is wonderful for traditional watercolor painting. But for a loose smushing technique like this, you really don't need nearly as much paint. Now, once I had enough color on my paintbrush, I transferred it onto the piece of clear plastic, swirling it around to create an organic patch of color. Then came the fun part. I simply pressed the plastic onto my watercolor paper, gently smushing it down before lifting it away to reveal a beautifully textured impression. Now, I started with a soft, almost coral pink and repeated the process 2 or 3 times, building up the color little by little until I was happy with the intensity. I find that layering several light application gives you much more control rather than trying to achieve a perfect look with a single press. And it also creates lots of beautiful variations in the background. Next, I moved on to some darker shades of pink to gradually build up the depth and dimension on my background. Now, working from lighter to darker colors gives me so much more control over the final look and allows the different shades to blend together beautifully. You will notice that after applying each shade of pink, I take a moment to wipe the plastic clean before adding the next color. This helps keeps the colors fresh and prevents them from becoming muddy. After a while, I just simply rested my watercolor panel on a microfiber cloth, which made the cleanup process quick and effortless. One of my favorite things about building color this way is the gorgeous organic texture it creates. The random patterns, the soft blends, and little pockets of concentrated pigment give the background so much more character, something that's nearly impossible to recreate with a paintbrush alone. Now, if you're thinking about using this technique for mass producing cards, here's the best part. no two panels will ever be exactly alike. Every time you press down the plastic, the colors move a little differently, creating a completely unique background. So even if you're making a whole set of cards, each one will have its own beautiful, one of a kind watercolor design. Complement all those beautiful shades of pinks, I bought in a gorgeous purple and concentrated it mostly around the edges of the watercolor panel. I absolutely love the combination of pink and purple. They blend together so effortlessly and create such a soft, dreamy look. Now, as I continued smushing the colors, that beautiful layered texture really started to develop. The random patterns and variations in color add so much interest and make the background feel organic and full of movement. Now, I know it looks a little messy at this stage, but you might be wondering where this is all going, but trust the process. Once we start die cutting the butterflies from this panel, everything will come together. Those little pops of pinks and purples, along with that gorgeous watercolor texture, will make each butterfly look completely unique, and you'll see exactly what I was hoping to achieve. Now, even though this background already has lots of beautiful watercolor texture, I couldn't resist a little bit of sparkle. So I reached out for my antique gold ink spray and lightly misted it across the panel, focusing on few random areas rather than covering the entire background. Now, before the spray had a chance to dry, I placed the plastic sheet right over these little droplets and gently smooshed them around, just like we did with our watercolors. This softened the harsh splatters into a beautiful organic streak and puddles of shimmer, helping the metallic ink blend naturally into our beautiful background. I love this little extra step because it adds just the right amount of sparkle without overwhelming the watercolor. As the light catches those hints of gold, it gives the finished butterflies a subtle elegance and a little touch of magic. Now it's time for my favorite part, which is die cutting. I bought in the large zero waste fluttering fantasies die and used it to cut out all those beautiful butterflies from our custom watercolor panel in just one pass. Now, one thing I really appreciate about the watercolor smooshing technique is that it doesn't require a lot of water. Because of that, my watercolor paper barely warped, and I didn't have to spend a lot of time waiting for the panel to dry before moving on to the die cutting. Now, if I had painted this background directly with a paintbrush, I'd probably have to add a lot of water, which means that's more drying time and greater chances that the paper might warp. So, not only is this technique incredibly easy, but it is also a real time saver. And just take a look at these beautiful butterflies as I pop them out of the die. Now, every single one has its own unique blend of pink, purples, and shimmering gold, making them look like tiny pieces of watercolor art. Now, that's one of the things I love the most about using a zero waste die. You end up with a whole collection of beautifully coordinated embellishments from a single background panel. And well, you could also use that beautiful die cut background panel, just place it on a plain white cardstock, and you have a fun watercolor background ready to go. I gently popped out all those die cut pieces and laid each of those beautiful butterflies onto my work surface. This was such a fun moment because I could finally see all the gorgeous watercolor variations coming together. I spent some time playing around with different pieces and figuring out how I wanted to layer them to create a dimensional butterfly. Now, since this is a layering die set, you can really have fun mixing and matching the different sections, choosing which colors you want to highlight and create unique combinations. Now, I love that even though all of these butterflies come from the same watercolor panel, each one has its own unique personality, some with more of that pink, some with more of the purples. The different areas of the pink, purple, and gold show up in different ways, making every butterfly look a little tiny handcrafted watercolor piece. You can definitely add multiple layers to these butterflies if you want to create even more dimension and detail. But for my card today, I decided to keep it a little simpler and use the large butterfly layer paired with just one smaller layer on top. Now, I wanted these butterflies to have some beautiful dimensions, so I will be using foam tape to pop them up and give them that little extra lift. Another fun way to add even more dimension to your die cut pieces is by using the Petal Shaper tool by Altenew. Now, this tool is usually used to create beautiful curves, textures, and realistic shapes on flowers, especially when you're working with layered floral die cut pieces. But today we are going to use them on well, are butterfly wings. We will be using them to gently curl and shape the butterfly wings. Now, the set comes with a soft molding pad which provides the cushioned surface that allows you to shape and sculpt your pieces without damaging the paper. For perfect, it's perfect for creating those natural curves and indentations, whether you're working with petals, leaves, or in our case, butterfly wings. It also includes three dual-ended styluses that come in different sizes, giving you plenty options depending on how much detail and dimension you want to add to your die cut pieces. Now, I curled up the wings of all the small butterflies that I plan to layer on top of the larger butterflies. I left the larger butterflies as is. We will be directly adhering them on our card front. Now, with just a few gentle strokes and a little bit of shaping, these flat die cuts start coming to life and look so much more realistic. Now that the wings are curled, we are now ready to assemble these beautiful butterflies. I'll be mounting the smaller butterfly layers onto the larger ones using some foam tape. The combination of foam tape along with those gently curled wings creates so much beautiful dimension. It really helps the butterflies look like as if they are lifting off the page, adding that realistic movement and lovely layered effect. Now, I cut my foam tape into smaller pieces and carefully place them behind the butterfly body, making sure that none of the adhesive would peek through the delicate die cut openings. Now, this little extra step keeps the finished butterflies looking clean and polished while still giving them plenty of dimension. Once all the beautiful butterflies were assembled and set aside, it was time to work on their little bodies. For this, I decided to use the brushed gold metallic cardstock by Altnew, which coordinates beautifully with the gold splatters that we added to our watercolor panel. Now, I love how this little detail ties everything together. The shimmer from the butterflies complements beautifully with the subtle metallic touch in the background and gives the butterflies that little extra bit of elegance. Another feature I really appreciate about this die set is that butterfly body cuts out 5 pieces at once, making the assembly process so quick and easy. Now, this definitely is a set that I would recommend, especially if you love creating multiple embellishments from a single die cut. Not only does it give you a beautiful collection of butterflies all at once, but the layering design also makes it so easy to create dimensional, detailed pieces that look amazing on your handmade cards. Since we already added dimension between the butterfly layers using foam tape, I decided to adhere the gold butterfly bodies directly onto the butterflies using liquid glue. Now, this helps keep the overall dimension balanced while still allowing the beautiful layered wings to be the star of the show. The gold bodies add perfect finishing touch, and I love how the metallic cardstock ties in with the antique gold splatters we added on our watercolor background. Now that our butterflies are ready, let's move on to creating the background for our card. Initially, I was planning on keeping things very simple and place the butterflies directly onto either a soft pink or a white card panel, but then I came across a beautiful card shared by Teresa from the Alt News design team, and I was instantly inspired by her design. The card featured a gorgeous stamped image in the background with layered butterflies placed beautifully on top. I love how the simple stamped detail added so much interest without taking away from the butterflies, and I decided to create something inspired by that idea. Now, I'm not sure if Teresa used the same watercolor technique for the butterflies, but I absolutely love the way that she combined the stamped background with the dimensional butterfly layers. It's such a beautiful way to create a card that feels elegant yet still lets the butterflies take the center stage. So I started by stamping this beautiful, alluring orchid floral image onto a white cardstock panel using industrial diamond ink. Now, this ink is not quite true black, it's actually a beautiful dark gray tone, which gives a softer and more elegant look to the background. I feel like this would complement the colorful butterflies beautifully without competing with them. Now, I stamped the image twice to get a nice crisp impression and make sure all the details of the floral design were captured perfectly. This simple stamped background adds just the right amount of texture and interest while still allowing our dimensional butterflies to remain the main focus of our card. Whether it's a focal point image, embellishments, or even sequences, I always like to work with odd numbers when arranging elements on my cards. I find that using threes or five elements creates a more balanced and visually pleasing design. So for this card, I selected three out of the four butterflies we created and started arranging them onto my stamped floral panel. To complete the design, I also added a simple sentiment that says hugs, which I heat embossed in gold onto black cardstock strip. Now, for the butterfly placement, I wanted to create a little bit of variation in dimension. So I added foam tape behind the first and the third butterfly to lift them off the background and create a beautiful layered look. For the butterfly in the center, I adhered it directly onto the panel using liquid glue, which helps create different levels of depth and makes the arrangement feel more natural. I also use little foam tape for my sentiment. I love how these little differences in height make the butterflies look like they are gently floating across our floral background. And with that, our card panel is complete. Now, even though we already have so much beautiful gold accents on our butterflies, I couldn't resist adding just a little bit more of that sparkle. So I reached out for some of the antique gold stellar sequences and scattered them around the butterflies and the sentiment area. These tiny details add that extra touch of shimmer and help tie all the gold elements together beautifully. I love how a few carefully placed embellishments can really bring a card design together. They add just enough sparkle without taking away from the watercolor butterflies, which are still the true stars of our card. I then mounted this panel onto a top folding A2 size card base using some foam tape. So we have a lot of dimension on this card, and the butterflies pop, the card panel pops, and well, we have some beautiful gold accents. And with that, our beautiful watercolor butterfly card is complete. I absolutely love how this project came together, from creating that fun, messy watercolor smushed background to turning them into these gorgeous dimensional butterflies. I hope this inspires you to try this technique and create your own unique watercolor panels. Remember, the best part about handmade cards is that every single piece is one of a kind. Before you go, don't forget to check out the details in the description box for the giveaway. Make sure you follow the required steps and leave your comment. Now, I'll be sure to link all the supplies that I used to create this card in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. What if I told you one sheet of foil is all you need to create three beautiful holiday cards? Well, in today's video, I'm showing you how to stretch your crafting supplies to the absolute max by creating three different festive cards using just one single sheet of foil. We'll recycle the leftover foil for the Ho 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 foil and blend panels by This Calls for Confetti, transforming every last bit into gorgeous holiday designs. Then we'll finish each card with plenty of sparkle, fun die cuts, and some of the brand new embellishments from their latest release. Hello, crafty friends. I'm Revati, and welcome to my crafty space. Let's jump right in and get crafting. So here's the brand new holiday release by This Calls for Confetti, and it's packed with products that make holiday crafting so much fun. I'll be creating three festive cards featuring the Ho 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 stencil and die bundle along with the coordinating foil and blend panels. We also have the Deck the Halls layering stencil and die set with its matching foil and blend panels, but that is something that I'll use in my next video. And don't miss this little pack of confetti, which is a little holiday mix packed in that beautiful packaging. Let us start by taking a closer look at the Ho 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 bundle. Now, first up, there are these Ho 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 foil and blend toner sheets. Now, each of this pack includes four A2 sized panels of each coordinating layered design, giving you a total of 16 festive toner sheets to create with. Now, they are printed on premium heavyweight toner cardstock, which gives you beautiful, crisp, and even foiling results every time. These panels are designed to coordinate perfectly with the Ho 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 layering stencil, allowing you to add colorful ink blending over your foil designs for a complete layered look. Just keep in mind that these panels are intended to be used with toner reactive foils like your deco foils, and these are compatible with the hot foil laminator, making it incredibly easy to achieve those gorgeous foiled backgrounds with minimal effort. First glance, each foiled panel might look a little incomplete on its own, but once you pair it with the coordinating layering stencils, That's when the magic really happens. The foiled details and the ink blending come together to create a beautifully finished design that's full of depth and dimension. And that's exactly what we will be doing in our video today. Now, I'll be using three out of these four coordinating designs to create three absolutely gorgeous holiday cards while also sharing a few tips for getting the most out of your supplies along the way. Next up is the Ho 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 stencil and die bundle, which is designed to coordinate perfectly with the foil and blend toner sheets. The bundle includes four layering stencils along with a set of coordinating dies, making it incredibly easy to create these fun, whimsical holiday designs. Now, of course, the toner sheets are completely optional. You can absolutely use just the stencil and die bundle on its own to create beautiful cards, so there are plenty of flexibility depending on the look that you're going for. Now, the coordinating dies fit perfectly within the open areas of the stencil design, allowing you to cut out individual elements with ease. Use them as festive die cut embellishments or sentiments, or die cut directly from your card panel to create fun windows for your shaker cards. There are so many creative possibilities with this bundle. Next, let's take a quick look at the Deck the Halls bundle as well, which follows the same versatile concept. It includes the Deck the Hall foil and blend toner sheets, along with a coordinating layering stencil and die bundle. Now, again, we have 16 premium heavyweight cardstocks of toner sheets with those absolutely gorgeous designs. They are specifically printed to deliver those crisp, even foiling results when used with toner reactive foil and a hot foil laminator. Now, while the foil panels may look a little incomplete here as well, once you use the coordinating layering stencils over top, the designs fully come to life with the beautiful colors, depth, and dimension. The Deck the Hall stencil and die bundle include four layering stencils and along with the coordinating die that can cut out the ornaments. Now you'll see that these layering stencils line up perfectly with all the ornaments on the bundle. Now, the coordinating dies, they fit in perfectly within the open areas of the stencil again, making it easy to either cut out the individual ornaments or you could die cut the windows to create your shaker cards. It's an incredibly versatile bundle that offers so many creative possibilities, just like the Ho 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 bundle, whether you choose to foil, stencil, die cut, or combine all three techniques together. For our video today, I'll be using only the Ho 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 bundle, and the Deck the Foil bundle I will be showing you guys in one of my future videos. To get started, I'll be laminating one of the foil and blend toner sheets using my hot foil laminator and piece of toner reactive foil. This is such a quick and satisfying process, and once the panel comes out of the laminator and you peel the foil, you will be left with that beautifully crisp, shiny details that are ready for the next step, which is adding color with the coordinating layering stencils. Now, I will first go ahead and turn on the machine and make sure that the setting is on hot. While my laminator is heating up, I'll go ahead and prep my toner sheet along with the foil. Now, since this is a holiday project, I wanted to stick to those classic festive colors. So I chose a beautiful combination of traditional greens and reds. For my foil, I went with this absolutely gorgeous shiny green foil, which I thought would pair perfectly with the holiday design. I simply layered the foil over my toner design, making sure the foiled side was facing up before running it through the laminator. The next step is completely optional, but I like to use a little bit of washi tape to hold my foil securely in place. It just helps keep everything aligned, and I am really satisfied and stress free while it goes through the laminator and gives me a little extra peace of mind. I like to place my toner sheet and foil sandwich inside a piece of regular printer paper before sending it through my laminator. This extra layer helps protect the foil and toner sheet while also making the process a little smoother as it passes through the machine. Now you'll know the machine is ready when the green light lights up. So there is a little green light next to the power button. So you'll know when your machine is ready. Once everything is ready, I'll run it through my heated laminator and let the magic happen. Now the video here is sped to 2x, so this is a relatively slow process. You'll just need to be a little patient for your paper to come out. After foiling, we'll be left with this beautiful shiny design that is ready for the next step, which is adding color and bringing the layers to life using the coordinating stencils. But before we move on to the stenciling step, I want to make sure that I use every single bit of this beautiful green foil. So I'll bring in my second toner sheet and carefully align the leftover foil with the next design. The great thing about these toner sheets is that the designs are already perfectly spaced, so lining up the foil is actually pretty simple. Once I've positioned it, I will secure it in place and run it through my laminator again, giving this foil a second life and creating another gorgeous foiled panel. Now, peeling the foil away from the toner sheet is definitely my favorite part of this entire process. There's something so satisfying about slowly revealing that gorgeous shiny design underneath the foil and seeing the details come to life. And because I wanted to make sure we used every little bit of this beautiful green foil, I continued with the remaining pieces and added that same stunning shine to a third toner panel. It is such a fun way to stretch your supplies and create multiple beautiful backgrounds with just one sheet of foil. Now, since this bundle includes so many panels, you could absolutely continue this process using a variety of different holiday colored foils and create a whole collection of beautiful backgrounds. Simply repeat the same steps with the remaining toner sheets, and before you know it, you will have all 16 panels foiled and ready to turn into Christmas cards. It is such a quick and efficient way to create a large batch of festive cards while still giving each one a gorgeous handmade look. Now here's a side-by-side look at all the three panels that we foiled, and I absolutely love how gorgeous and shiny they turned out. The green foil adds such a beautiful festive touch, and it's amazing to see how much you can create from just one sheet of foil. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these panels on their own might look a little incomplete, but this is where the magic happens. Let's bring in our coordinating stencil and add those beautiful layers of colors to really make these designs come to life. Now, since we are already having the gorgeous green foil as our base, I wanted to complement it with some classic holiday reds. I'll be using two shades of distress inks for my stenciling process. We have barn door and lumberjack plaid to add depth and dimension and that perfect festive feel to all our panels. Now for the stenciling, even though this is a single open layer on each of those stencils, I still like to create some depth and dimension by using multiple shades of ink. I start with a lighter shade of red as my base color, making sure to cover each of the open areas evenly. Then I go back with the darker shade and add light touches of color toward the bottom of each section. This simple technique creates beautiful shading and gives the design more dimension, making the stenciled area look richer and more vibrant against that gorgeous green foiled background. Now, while I'm stenciling these panels, I just wanted to take a quick moment to share a fun Instagram hop that is happening right now. Now, this video is actually a part of the Merry Mischief giveaway hop on Instagram by This Calls for Confetti. The hop is happening all week long, where a few of us Merry Mischief makers will be sharing a lot of fun creativity, crafty inspirations, and just a tiny bit of Bigfoot level chaos along the way. Now, there are some really fun surprises planned, and each day brings a brand new surprise, so you won't want to miss it. Be sure to head over to my Instagram profile to check out all the details and find out how you can participate. And I will also be sure to leave a link to the giveaway information in the description box below. Once I was done with panel number one, I repeated the same exact stenciling process on panel number two and three, adding those beautiful layers of red ink to bring out the festive design. Now, for panel number two, I decided to switch things up a little bit. Instead of stenciling the ho 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 design directly into the panel, I used the coordinating die to cut it out and as a sentiment and then adhered it right in the center of the design. Now I cut all the three using some white cardstock and ink blended those beautiful reds that I used on my first card, and I stuck all of the ho ho ho's on the center of this panel. Now I absolutely love the dimension that these die cut alphabets add to our panel. The die cut piece creates a beautiful focal point and gives the panel such a fun pop while still allowing that gorgeous green foiled background to shine through. I did stack up three layers of the sentiment die cuts to give a little extra dimension and height. This also created a small gap within the open areas of the Christmas trees that you can see inside each of the O's. Now, I had a little fun idea here to make these details stand out even more. I added some glossy accents into those open areas and sprinkled some glitter to create that extra bit of sparkle. It adds such a beautiful festive shine and really makes the sentiment pop against the foil background. I brushed off any of the excess glitter using a soft paintbrush and then set the panel aside to let the glossy accents dry completely before turning it into a finished card. I usually like to give my glossy accents plenty of time to dry, at least an hour if not longer, just to make sure it sets properly and keeps that beautiful glossy finish. While that panel was drying, I moved on to working on panel number 3. For my third panel, I kept things a little simpler and let that beautiful foiling do all the talking. I used the foiled ho 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 sentiment along with those two little coordinating foiled embellishments to create a clean and elegant holiday design. I used the same shades of reds that we used earlier to add beautiful color and texture around the sentiment. For the centers of each of those leaves, I decided to bring in a third color, a deep shade of brown. I thought this added a lovely bit of contrast and extra color variation, making the set of 3 festive cards feel a little more cohesive while still giving each card its own unique look. Now, initially, I had planned on keeping this card simple with just the stencil designs, but after looking at the second card with all that gorgeous glitter and sparkle, I was inspired to add a little more shine on this one as well. I bought in some glitter paste and applied it over the open areas of the leafy vines using the stencil. And well, I was so glad I decided to do that. Once I lifted the stencil, I was absolutely mesmerized by how beautiful the design looked. The combination of foiled details, ink blending, and glitter paste created such a magical, festive texture on this panel. Isn't this absolutely gorgeous? I would love to know in the comments below which one of these 3 panels is your favorite. If you ask me, it is definitely a tough choice because I absolutely love how each of these panels turned out. They all have their own unique look, from that beautiful foil shine to the stencil details and that added sparkle. Now, before turning these into finished cards, I made sure to give all the panels plenty of time to dry completely. Now, once everything was nice and dry, I trimmed each panel down and adhered them onto my card base. For the final cards, I used 2 red top folding card bases and 1 white top folding card base to complement the festive colors and let each design shine. These cards are absolutely complete as they are, but I really wanted to show you the Ho 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 confetti mix as well. It is such a beautiful mix of shiny, sparkly embellishments, and I have to admit, I was really tempted to add them all on all of my cards. Well, I decided to pick out a few pieces and then add them to just one of the cards with that beautiful stencil design. But honestly, I might save the rest and use them to create a fun shaker card in the future because this confetti mix is just too pretty not to use. I always end up needing so many Christmas cards during the holiday season, so I'm pretty sure I'll be putting all the 16 panels from this bundle to good use and probably creating even more festive projects with them throughout the year. And here we have it, 3 festive holiday cards created with just one sheet of foil and few coordinating supplies from the This Calls for Confetti holiday release. I absolutely love how these panels transformed once we added the stenciling, die cuts, and those little touches of sparkle. This collection makes it so easy to create beautiful handmade holiday cards while still giving you plenty of room to personalize each design. I hope this inspired you to look at your supplies a little differently and find creative ways to stretch them further. Now, don't forget to check out the Merry Mischief giveaway hop on Instagram for some festive fun and surprises. And be sure to let me know in the comments which card was your favorite. I'll be sure to leave links to all the supplies that I used to create these cards down in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. What if you could create a soft, elegant floral background with just the right touch of sparkle without it ever feeling overdone? Well, today I'm sharing exactly how to do that using some gorgeous new products from the latest Simon Says Stamp Happy Everything release. Hello, crafty friends. I'm Revati.